Okay, well, welcome everybody. So it's time for the goalie panel. So we're quite excited. So we have two people with us here in person. So we have Mikael from LIC and we have Maciej from Färjestad. And then online we have Rahm and Thomas Magnusson and Szwoch Tierney. So now I mentioned the names, but I'll let you guys present each other or yourself and what your role in each team is. So I'll start with you, Mikael.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Mikael Vernblom, goalie coach in Linköping, men's team, and video coach. Very often that's go hand in hand, at least in Sweden. Yeah.
Maciej, Szwoch, goaltending coach, Färjestad. I used to work as the analyst in the team. I had no idea that it would include being the assistant general manager. If I would have known that, I probably wouldn't be as happy when Eric came in, but very happy to have Eric here.
And William?
Yeah, William Rahm is my name. I've been in the goalie coach and the video coach in HV71 for 11 years, but now I'm moved on to Switzerland. So I have the same role, but in Langnau Tigers.
And Thomas?
Yes, I'm Thomas Magnusson. I'm a former goalie coach. I was a goalie coach for Djurgården, Swedish national championship team 5 times in the early days. I'm now holding the position of head of goalie development at the Swedish Ice Hockey Association.
Thank you. And Sean?
I'm Sean Tierney. I'm the Director of Hockey Services at Sportlogiq, and I'm surrounded by goaltending experts and really pleased that Mickey invited me to be a data voice in this conversation with goalie experts today.
Yeah, thank you. So as you see, we have a quite diverse panel with Thomas having perhaps the most historic perspective. So Thomas, can you give us a little bit of perspective of sort of the history of analytics in sort of the context?
Yeah, sure. I think analytics has gone through some phases over time, of course. I started out as probably the first goalie coach in Sweden, specifically working with goaltenders in, as I mentioned, in Djurgården in 1983. And by that time, if any sort of analysis, we had the VHS, right? So we worked with 2 separate decks of tape recorders and analyzing videotape. That's what we needed to do to analyze our goalies. But as early as the mid-90s, actually, we got in touch with a software company that gave us the opportunity to analyze goalies. It was based on a software called Profile, where we actually could analyze and track what was happening on the ice on our laptops at that time, position on the ice, what kind of posture or stance the goalie had, where the goalie was or the goal was let in what part of the net, how the goalie was acting, not only the posture, but also if it was a save with the glove, or at that time, probably a skate save or a pad stack, long lost arts of goaltending, but that's what we did. And we tried to combine that with video analysis, but it was hard to do and a lot of work. We were at that time goalie coaches. I had a lot of help from from a partner in our club who worked with the juniors, and he also was more into the computer stuff. At that time, it wasn't so successful working with this, and it was very time consuming. So probably not until there were more ways to analyze with video, and we were introduced to different video software and able to track goalies more, and we got into eventually to Dartfish and those kind of software to help us analyze the goalies. By the time companies like Sportlogiq appeared on the scene, I was no longer a goalie coach. I was working more with goalie coach education within the federation. So I haven't all that much user experience of the modern parts. I have tried out the different software, and as I can see now, there's been an evolution in the software of analytics that are really helpful to us goalie coaches, and also we work to help out in goal scoring. And in my opinion, I find most of what we see now based actually of what was going on in Sweden, parallel to what I was mentioning, what we were doing. But at that time, there was someone in Sweden who I actually called up the other day. His name is Stefan Lunner. He worked in Sweden on the top level. He also worked on some national teams and eventually ended up working one season with New York Islanders, and also for 2 years in CSKA Moscow in Russia. And as I found out now later, what he was doing is actually the foundation of what we're talking about now, with shot quality, with tracking shots, with a lot of focus on what he was calling the central line, which then sort of moved into, in some ways to present this, the Royal Road, or the midline, or the shot line perhaps. And he was actually recording in the mid-90s green and red shots, and putting a quality into that, which eventually led to a championship for his team, or not, the coach that he was working with won a Swedish championship, and eventually we won one of these gold medals for the Worlds with that coach, Per Mårts, who Stefan had been working with. And just to give you some historic perspective, this has been going on for a long time, even before it was possible to put these data into use the way we're doing now, but it has been tracked. Mickey asked me to give you some historic perspective, and there has been a lot of going on for a long time, and we see a lot of progress making use of artificial intelligence, doing this in a different way today. And I think there's a lot of possibilities and possibilities of growth if we can cooperate like we're doing now.
Yeah, thank you. So now we've gotten sort of the historic perspective. We've seen that there's been a lot of developments, and we have goalie coaches from three different teams here. And I wanted to ask you, what kind of data do you use, and what kind of platform do the three of you use? Maybe I'll start with William this time.
I've been a long user now of Sportlogiq, obviously, since we use it in the SHL. In Switzerland now, I will be using 49ing, which is the official provider of stats and video.
Yeah, thank you. Mikael?
Sportlogiq. But we also have a number of different platforms that we use depending on what we're looking at. But we're working with a team, Sportlogiq, and yeah.
And in Färjestad?
Well, I think it's 4 or 5 years ago now, we changed from Dartfish to Huddle because we want to do more in-depth analysis. And what we're doing right now is we're scraping off the raw data, the event data from the Sportlogiq website, and then incorporating that together with the Huddle system. And now we're able to use all that X and Y data, all the small little things that you usually don't see, and put analysis together as a team and as a goalie. So we have a specific goalie section for that, and we have a team section as well.
Okay, thank you. And in terms
Niklas,
of, yeah, please go ahead.
I just want to say I'm just a step behind Maciej in that case. So we're doing the same thing starting this year. So yeah, same platform.
Okay, thank you. So I mean, you obviously then are sort of evolving, but is there some data that you feel are missing? So maybe I start with Färjestad.
Well, actually, I don't know if Freddie's still here, but I would love to have Freddie in my team. Not only do I think he's a very, very smart guy, but also he has access to data which we don't have in Färjestad right now. I would love to have access to the data that actually tells me how my guys are doing on the ice on a daily basis. We track data 3 times a week. We play games 3 times a week, sometimes only 2. And that's the data we have access to. I would love to have access to the data on a daily basis, understanding, knowing how much wear and tear there are on goalies. We got to remember, goaltending today compared to the stories that Thomas was talking about is so different. We're seeing a decrease in the amount of games in which NHL starting goalies are playing. It used to be 70 plus. We're down to 50 right now. So I would love to have a more in-depth understanding on what's going on in a daily session.
So for the purpose of load balancing and sort of longevity, etc. Then
Yes.
Okay. And Mikael?
Yeah, I would love to have more goalie specific data. No matter if I'm looking at Sportlogiq, Sport Contract, whatever I look at, more goalie specific, and I think it would be. And I think Sean mentioned in the earlier panel that he also had that the way of thinking right now. So there's so many interesting things we can do, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And William, do you have anything on your wish list?
Well, it's probably like providing context that you can filter very efficiently for specific goaltending needs. I'm thinking about how to tie goal situations to practice in an even more detailed way, for example. So probably the context, like even more detail in the context before the shot.
Thank you. So now we've sort of heard from 3 goalie coaches, and I wanted to hear sort of the volume perspective. So first with Thomas, you work with goalie coaches, you teach them, etc. What's your perspective? Have you seen something that you think would be good to have in terms of data or analytics tools?
Yeah, for sure. I can only attest to what Maciej is saying there about tracking workload. We have been in touch from the Swedish Hockey Association's standpoint with Freddie and other stakeholders in the business of finding ways to track better what goalies are doing in games and in practice in reference to workload, because as of today, we don't know exactly what the demands are on the goalie. We don't know how we should prepare the best way. We think we know, but there's no research. And to connect different ways of finding out more about that through analytics and through workload and the demand of the goalie, and try to track that in even better ways, I think would be very valuable for us. And when we talk about the game itself, I think we are on the right track to try to, in a better way, or even more sophisticated ways, connecting the shot, the opportunity to score with what happened before and what happens afterwards, to even better see the whole sequence, which I think it's the essence of goaltending, not just the shot, but whole sequence. And I think we are on to that with the analytics of today, but I think we should try to pursue that even further.
Thank you. So, I mean, in some sense, there's different types of data. There's sort of the catapult data that sort of measures certain things, and then from type of video data, Sportlogiq type data, I guess you get more, okay, you can probably measure if people are getting fatigued over time by measuring reaction times, etc. But I wanted to hear with Sean, if there's sort of more data out there, or are there other things that people look at in NHL? Are you guys developing new tools, etc.?
Yeah, so again, this panel that is assembled here, these are some of the best goalie thinkers. And so what I'm interested in researching is exactly what this group of people raises as the next things. Even the pad stacking that Thomas mentioned, if we can get back to that, I'd be happy to do that too. But the idea of the pre-shot context, I think that's really key. What can we find with goaltenders about the series of events prior to a shot? And I know in the last presentation, we heard 8 seconds pre-shot, or 20, or whatever that variant is. In some of the research we're doing, we're finding if a goalie leaves a net to play a puck, anything within that next sort of 10 to 15 seconds, they're more likely to give up a goal than if they didn't leave the net. So how do we pass those insights on to goalie coaches? How do they put that into use in practice to say, do we want you to go stop those rim arounds, or are you better to leave them, stay in your net, and let them go around more often? What about a rush entry with an east-west pass? And again, Thomas really spoke to a lot of these things that have been coming a long time. Some of that pre-shot, east-west passing, goal line, back out into the slot passing, turnover before a shot. All of these things are things that we're investigating, incorporating into our models about the quality of a shot a goalie's facing. So I think there's a lot there, and we can push down that road. The other part, though, it reminds me of the prior data integration panel, where we were speaking about sort of the cognitive and the workload and the physical data that we can incorporate. We're seeing, just as Maciej said, workloads for goalies are dropping, and timeshares between starter and backup, that's increasing. I would love to continue pushing into the field of Sportlogiq data and catapult data or whatever to say, when are goalies peaking in their performance, and what trends do we see in workload negatively impacting a goalie's performance? How can we optimize how we use goaltenders? And what do we see over time as we incorporate those different pieces of data? So for me, that's where the research goes, is sequences, pre-shot, but also how do we bring in the physical and the sort of mental aspects to it as well, and balance those both to push the field.
Okay, and in terms of new tools and metrics, are there new metrics coming out?
Yes, there are, and it's something, Mickey, I know that you and I spoke when we chatted before too about maybe showing a visual that's got some examples of new things that we have and are doing. Is this a good time?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, if you'll allow me for just a sec, I'll share my screen. Oh, do you have it? Beautiful. Okay, so I can see it there too. Okay, let me just navigate myself for a second here. So what I'm showing is something that we use, again, you know, we're across different leagues and different clubs. This is some of what Thomas spoke to about some of those key pre-shot contextual features. So I don't know if that's still brought up on the screen there, but I'll speak to it. There we go. So in terms of where a shot is aimed on net, we have Linus Ullmark here, just a goalie chosen completely at random, no specific reason to highlight Linus Ullmark. So we get the targeting on net for the goalie. This particular example doesn't show us a lot because this is a goalie who absolutely dominated this year, but we still get some sense of where are some weak spots just in terms of shot targeting. How do we use this with a goalie to improve their performance? How do we use it as an opponent looking to beat Ullmark? But if you focus your eyes just on the side, this speaks to a little bit of that pre-shot movement that we can measure and say something about goalie performance. So if you see west low to high, what we're talking about there is when Ullmark faces a shot on the west side where a low to high pass preceded the shot, what's his save percentage? And then we color it relative to the league. Is he good compared to other goalies or not? And for Ullmark, we're not looking at a whole lot of weak spots in this profile, but this is one. Low to high on the west side for this goaltender, that's a way that teams had some success. The same play on the other side, working the puck down to the goal line, back out for a shot on the east, low to high, you're not beating him there, one of the top goalies in the league. So this is really just scratching the surface. We can go back an event, back 3 events, back 5 events, and really start to cluster some of these pieces together to talk about which sorts of things can beat a goalie or can help a goalie. But we get context here, and you can just kind of, you know, nose around this view. How does movement prior to the shot affect a goalie? And if I had picked a non-Linus Ullmark today, we'd see some redder spots in different areas, but he had a really good season, so very difficult to beat. Anyway, so just a quick example of some of the things that we're already doing that I hope, you know, lead the conversation forward to the next things we can do.
Okay, thank you. So then I move over to the goalie coaches. Is this what you want, or is there other things you want, or do you have questions to Sean? Mikael?
I love it. I mean, this is what I want, part of it. Of course, there's more things I want to add to it, but something along this way, it's very good. Like it.
Yeah, and we have been speaking, the two of us, to Sean about this, and as you say, there's a lot more context to put into this. But I'm happy to see that there's a work in progress here, Sean. When can we expect the full analysis to be done? Next week, tomorrow?
Just email me after the panel, and I should be ready to go.
Oh, perfect.
And William, maybe I mean, now you're working with 49ers, but is this what you want, and or are there more things you want to add to the wish list?
I think the most has been said here, and I guess everybody is looking for more like context. This is fantastic information, and which gives you like certain tendencies about the game for a goalie where he's giving up goals and etc. Well, what I think is very interesting to kind of be able to take it back to practice is obviously to break down these numbers into different situations. What does this mean? Because there's not only one play that is a pass from low to high and a one-timer. There could be multiple different things or situations that creates this shot. So that's what I'm interested in, because for me, in a perfect world, you could quickly filter out these events. Okay, there's a guy walking behind the net over the central line, then passing it into a one-timer in the high slot, for example. Okay, then I can work on this situation because my goaltender is struggling with this. So obviously that type of context is what I'm looking at. And maybe that means you have to kind of have someone with goaltending who understands goaltending, has to kind of categorize, maybe, I don't know, but that type of information I find very valuable, to take it back to practice and actually see what type of situations and scenarios is good and bad with a goaltender. Maybe not only for scouting, but even more so for my own goaltenders, so they can improve.
Thank you. And then, so I mean, Thomas, you mentioned sort of back in the 90s, sort of one of your friends looking at sort of the central line, etc. Is this sort of what you would have liked to have back then as well, then?
Yes, definitely. I just, as I tried to mention, the foundation of this was already there very early, but the technology was not there, of course. And now when we have the technology, I think it's really important that we work together, coaches and the tech guys. And this is a great example of that, where we can really advance this together.
Yeah.
If I could just throw something in on Thomas's remark, the great thing, I think it was really smart to start with the history of where the analytics on this have come from. And Thomas is so right that this is something people have been talking about for a lot longer than Sportlogiq. This is something that's been going on maybe as long as several of us have been alive and longer. I think that part is really important to keep in mind too, when you're trying to get buy-in with your staff, with your goalies, to say, this visual, maybe it looks intimidating at first or has new data, but these are ideas that have been around the game for decades. And now we have the technology to measure what smart goalie people have known for a long, long time. So when we bring these insights in to help goalies, we're talking about things we've known about hockey for ages. We just have the tools to measure it efficiently now. And I think for buy-in for that part with coaches and with players, it's really important to understand this isn't new. This isn't some strange technology. It's good ideas from hockey people that have been around for a long time.
Can I ask a quick question about that data?
Please.
So Sean, I guess it would be to you. I'm trying to understand the middle of the chest. Is that based on the middle of the chest or the middle of the net? So if they move to the side and it hits them in the middle of the chest, is that what you're registering, or is it the shot location?
Yeah, so we're measuring middle of the net on that, rather than the goalie's position. So he's in the net in the middle, getting chested on the puck 100% of the time. So just speaks to good positioning. You're not going to see goals there. But yeah, so it's measuring on the net, not on the goalie. Just if the goalie, leaves the net and has a puck hit them outside the post, we would register where it's going to the net, not where it's going.
Yeah, good. Thanks for that clarification.
Sure.
Okay, and in terms of, so I mean, when I look at this picture, it looks very symmetric, like left to right, right and left, etc. So in terms of scouting in NHL, is it this symmetric, or is it some goalies that are very asymmetric?
Yeah, again, I picked Ullmark for obvious reasons. If you were to choose different goaltenders, you're going to see some where blocker high is an issue, which not a surprise for goaltending. It's one of the most difficult spots. So blocker high, that 886 for Ullmark, you'll see that number drop pretty regularly. You will catch 5-hole as an issue on some players too. And then one thing that we'll see often is the west and east, low to high. Some goalies push better in one direction than another. And again, I'm speaking with goalie experts here, so I'll let them comment more on that. But Ullmark is showing this too, where on one side versus the other, pushing from the post out to the top of the crease or coming side to side, goalies will sometimes show better push on one side of the net than the other. So we'll get a bit of an imbalance. We're just not seeing it with this goaltender because he was incredible this season, but with others, we'll get more asymmetry for their profile.
Oh, thank you. So then I move over to the goalie coaches. Is this something you look at then in such a case at what time scale? Is it per season or is it even down to sort of shorter like 5 games?
Absolutely. I mean, I will follow it game by game, and 3 games, 5 games. And also I think I am a D coach here in the room, and I guess he and I will spend lots of time working with an offensive coach also. So this is not only the goalie coach thing, and this will be something for the team. Absolutely.
Well, definitely. And we did a miniature version of this inside SportsCore together with the data from Sportlogiq, but it limits us only to our players in Färjestad, which means that we know a lot about their game, about how Matt Tonkins performed this year or Dennis Hildeby, but I can't tell you a lot about what Marcus Högberg did because we simply don't have that data. And that's why we keep asking both myself and Mikael, and probably a lot more ask Sean, could you do this? Could we explore that? So this adds value, but coming back to what William said, we still need the eye test. We still need the experience. We still need to have the human side of it. And a great example of this is about 4 years ago, I had 2 goalies that were experimenting with I believe it was Whoop. They were having them on the wrist all the time. They were practicing with it. They were sleeping with it. And it was a great way for us to kind of see, okay, how are you doing? How are you feeling today? And one of the issues we ran into was one of the goalies was constantly fatigued. And he didn't feel fatigued, but the numbers showed that he was fatigued. Now, this created an issue because this player really, really trusted the numbers, and he became uncertain and felt that he couldn't play a game, even though his gut feeling said, I can play, but the numbers said it's something else. So this creates another issue with how do we present the data? What do we tell the players? How do we work with the players? How do we present the key aspects to this for the goalies, for the coaching staffs, or for people around the team? So I think there's a lot of question marks, and the more we dig into it, there's more questions. But I got to tell you, I love it.
Yeah. All right. William, do you have a take here?
I think most has been said right now. I actually wrote down something here, but so I forgot the question. So if you could please repeat it, yeah.
Yeah. So I can extend the question a little bit. So I mean, so there's also this sort of, I guess, mental aspect to goaltending. So how do you use all this data to make sure that the goaltender actually believe that they're good even when the numbers say they're bad?
For me, this has been a very important thing because we've always had, as long as I've been a coach, we've always had good video tools at hand. And for a long time, the trend was to use video extremely much. And for me, video as well as statistical analysis is a tool. You have to use that tool, but you have to combine it with the eye test or your experience, or if you feel that something doesn't correlate, you have to question it, like you would at university, and you have to use your own thinking as well. I think this is really important because there's humans out there playing this sport, so it's not going to be perfect anyhow. So even how much we want this to be like a video game that we can control by just putting the right numbers in, it's not going to be. So I think the human aspect is really important, and I think us coaches then becomes a very important filter. For example, it's a great example from Maciej here about the placebo maybe of fatigue, for example. So I think us coaches are really important here, becoming the filter for this.
Okay, thank you. And then if we think of, okay, there's different types of goalies in some sense, and there's different types of goalie coaches. And Thomas, you probably work with different types of goalie coaches. Who do you think would be most helped by these things? And are there people that still don't see value in it.
I can't see how anyone would not see value in it. I see a lot of value for any goalie coach working with this in the shape and form as it is presented now. I have a question for Sean about if we want to use this for more in general terms for goaltending, to see more general trends, how specific or detailed could we be? We have a 4 feet high net. Could we see each inch or foot, or how detailed could this be?
So that's a really good question, and it's exactly what you want to get from goalie experts to push things. Doing inch by inch right now without player puck tracking in the league, we wouldn't be able to do. We're sort of restricted to the zones, which is about the accuracy we have. The NHL has moved to puck and player tracking, where you do get that up and down Z coordinate, and you can do it inch by inch in that way. So that route is open, just not today, not on the Swedish side, but it's exactly the kind of direction you want to go to see, like maybe even if we don't have to use the visual this whole time. I don't want to hijack the entire panel, but if we look at Ullmark on his blocker side, do we see that the right underneath the crossbar, that's the problem, and everything up to 6 inches below is actually still good? Like when you've got it restricted to regions, it's like a scoring chance is an A, a B, or a C, but there's some A's that are a lot better than other A's, right? And so we would want those inches. We can't do it with this data just yet, but it's absolutely the next place to go.
But it is possible already if you take data from NHL, right?
On the NHL side, they have the player puck tracking, so you do get those specific X, Y, Z coordinates. Yeah.
Yeah, because that would work for the purpose I have to see trends in goaltending in general, and we see it with the goalies, so that would make sense.
Right, and from that higher lens, if we want to know about Ullmark for our next game, then that isn't ready yet. But just like you're saying, Thomas, just the research of it, what does this mean for goalies in general? What are the takeaways? That part you absolutely could go for, right away.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then, so I mean, one thing when I look at this thing, okay, so he has good stats, etc. But one thing it doesn't measure is, does it do timely saves? And my question to the goalie coaches is that something we want to have a measure for, or is that one of those things that you guys just have a feeling of, this person I trust to make the timely save, and that's my judgment rather than that I want Sportlogiq to tell me that.
I think the first question would be, what is a timely save? I mean, we're all coming back to the 2-pad stack we talked about later on. I mean, I love it. I love the flashy glove. I love all of these things. But going back to our playoff run, when we had the fortune of winning the championship in Färjestad last year, Dominic Furch was not a dominant player by the numbers all year. Dominic Furch was not a dominant player during the playoffs, making timely or great saves. His greatness was consistency. His greatness was that he was doing the exact same thing, whether or not it was a Monday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday afternoon, morning, didn't really matter. His greatest strength was consistency. And then you add this year championship goalie, Emil Larmi, who has extreme athletic abilities, and I love to watch him because of that. And his abilities are just totally different. I was listening to, I can't remember who the presenter was. We were talking about height. So there's different goalies in the NHL over the years. Is Pekka Rinne a better goalie than Mike Smith was? Well, they're roughly at the same size, but Mike Smith plays very deep in net. Pekka Rinne was all over the place. Henrik Lundqvist is the same height as Jonathan Quick, two completely different goalies. So I would love to see a metric that tells me what a timely save is and how we define that. But every goalie is different. And our biggest job as a goalie coach is to understand what their recipe is and apply that on a daily basis. And just mentioning these 5 names, there are everybody 6 names are completely different and requires a completely different approach from my side. But the numbers will definitely help me out in structuring the path on how do we create the best way of developing them.
Yeah. Mikael, is there such a thing as a timely save, and in such a case, we want a metric for it?
Great answer from you, Maciej. I think, and we have to remember, this is only a filter for us to make our job easier, to be faster, to be more accurate in what we see. But it's just filters, and then we dig deeper, and then when we start working, and sometimes we end up having the same thought about something, or we go one way, I will go another way. We see the same thing, so that's what it is. But it's only filters. As long as we have good filters and it's fast and it's accurate, we can work with it, and it will be great for our job, for the goal.
And William, what's your feeling?
One thing I like, I agree about the things being said here. Goalies look different, but one thing I really had to question myself during these years when all these data came into the game was like, what is a good goaltender? Is it if it looks the way I like it to look, or is it if it is efficient? So there could actually be a goalie who looked like I did not like his style at all, but he was a very efficient goaltender. And that has taken some time to accept this, obviously, because you have to question your own truths about things. So this is one thing. And if I tie it to timely saves, well, if we take style out of the picture here, a timely save could, for example, be defined as a grade A chance save when you're up or down by 1 goal in a game. That could be a timely save, even if it's a butterfly save that looks super controlled and consistent, or if it is like the throwing yourself from the corner back into the net and making a crazy stick save like Aiden Hill the other night here in the Stanley Cup playoffs. So this is something I've been thinking a lot about, actually, and it came to my mind when I got this phrase from a head coach, like, he doesn't make any timely saves, our goalie. And then I started thinking about, okay, how do we define this, and how can I prove him wrong? Obviously was my take on it. But I think this is a great thing with the data. You can see if the goalie is efficient or not, no matter what the style is.
No, I think I sort of agree with your answer in terms of where it probably matters is when the game is at a balance. So earlier today we had a paper sort of self-referencing, sorry about that, where we looked at the goal importance. And I think that metric can be actually translated into the importance of saves. Yeah. So if you're up by 6-1, it really doesn't matter what your goalie does, as long as it doesn't let in 5 goals. You still win the game. But if you're up by 1, it's really important to not let in that tying goal, of the sort of implications it has for the outcome of a game. But one thing that I had a quick conversation with Mikael before is sort of, and to some extent the augmentation is additional data sources. So I mean, with Sportlogiq, you have this data where you get from the from the TV channels, etc. And then I guess if you have at Sean's side, you might have NHL data that you can train your models on, where you have more detailed data, so you can improve the data that you actually give the Swedish clubs as well. And that from the club side, you have multiple cameras in your arenas now that you use in other purposes. How do you sort of see these systems combined? So I start with Sean. What kind of data sources do you look at, and how do you use other data sources to improve your data and what you can provide these goaltenders?
Yeah, this question will be a great one for the rest of the panel. From the provider side, we're collecting the data that we do and sharing. Just like you said, the advantage we have is because we're working across so many leagues, both Sweden, North America, the junior level, and on and on. At a general level, we've collected a lot of data over many leagues, over many seasons. That gives us a lot to work with to test ideas that then we can bring forward in a visual or bring forward in a suggestion for a team and say, we know this works over here. The data suggests this is something that is worth looking at over here. But in terms of integrating other sources, like some of the bio data that's available, some of the other things we've spoken about today, I'm really curious what everyone else on the panel would say. Is Sportlogiq winds up being one of your pillars, but I know that you're bringing in these other sources to give yourself the whole picture of what your goalies are doing.
Yeah.
Well, I think to me it's and Sean, you're gonna hate me for this, okay? I know I've been bugging you about this for so long, but bear with me, okay? So player tracking obviously is something that we need to have in the SHL further on. I think it's a natural step for the league to incorporate that. The next part would be like Eric and I have been discussing about could we put on devices on our own players to get more of the bio data that we're interested in. But something that I really would like, and there are possibilities of doing that, but I guess that there's some very smart people from Huddle right now that need to talk to some of the guys at Sportlogiq, please, is to actually have the flow of the live data coming into my computer. Because one of the things that I miss all the time is during the game when I'm having a cup of coffee and what have you not right next to my computer, I'm tagging the game. My fingers are glowing all the time because I'm tagging the game from a video coach perspective, and I'm trying to watch the game. I'm trying to see what's going on, and I'm trying to collect data. And there's about 1,000,001 things that is happening. If we could have the flow of the data just coming naturally into the computer, which I believe is possible somehow, that would be super, super, super helpful. And I could actually, for the very first time, and I've been coaching goalies for 15 years now, I could actually see a hockey game out of a goalie coach perspective, watching hockey instead of just punching the computer. So those three pillars for me would be very important. So if anybody in the room could fix this, please help.
Good answer, Mikael. What's your take?
Yeah, I like it. No, for me, it's a little bit. I think camera angles it's interesting. We get the view from in our league from Seymour, the league what we see on the television. But we have, of course, different angles. Muskin is winning that game also. I think he had, I don't know, how many angles do you have?
We have 9 camera angles at the moment.
See, I have about 5, I think, 6. Yeah. So, but I would like to have the data and be able to see from different angles and so on. So that's what we're working on right now, and that's an interesting question for you also, Sean. If it will be possible in the future to have like 1, 2 more angles if you have the video.
Yeah, I mean, some of this goes beyond my pay grade too. I'm in the fortunate position of being the hockey person here. I would love that too. So more angles, more ability to add context. But I'm a yes. The questions on how do you access more feeds? How do you process that? How do you integrate different angles on this information? There are challenges there that go beyond me. But for the purposes of a panel like this, absolutely, getting those different angles 100% informs it. I would love to push that way too.
William, thank you.
Yeah, I've just started working with a new software with 49ing in Switzerland, and this what I really like about that one is this thing, the camera angles. They have all the camera angles that's available during a TV game is available for you when you go into the software all the time, and you can jump easily in between, and it's connected to the video. So I like this about that software. The thing is that why most guys are using multiple systems is because, you know, like this system covers your needs in one way, and then you need the other one to kind of cover other needs. So I'm still exploring what this means for me now in my with this new software in Switzerland. But the camera angles I like a lot, and obviously that's if you would use like one system for everything. That would be the best thing. So I kind of agree with what's being said before, I guess.
Thanks. Thomas, do you have anything to add?
No, not really. I think this was more a question for the goalie coaches on the club level. I can only agree. The more angles, the better.
Yeah, thank you. So now we have these goalie coaches here. Are there any questions from the audience?
See, this is weird because when you go into a coach's office and you're discussing a goal, everybody is a goalie expert. But now when you have the chance to actually ask, nobody's the expert.
How should you score on these goalies?
Well, no, it's a more of a question: should he stop that puck? And it's always our fault, never the guy that actually played the net. But that's a different discussion.
Tim.
Yeah. So as a researcher who has access to puck and player tracking data, you know, it may not help you because you don't have the puck and player tracking data, but what data do you want? What stats do you want?
I think coming back to, I believe Thomas asked the question.
Or maybe don't think about technology at all. Like, so just imagine in your wildest dreams, I want this stat or that stat or this information or that information.
I think some of the things is in my wildest dreams, I kind of just discussed when it comes to incorporating having the live flow of the data, actually getting in touch with what's going on the ice together with the software, actually building our own output windows to be able to see what's actually going on out there, whether that be in workload, whether that being where shots are being taken or how saves are being executed. I think adding more context is something that we all ask for, and the only way to go there would be player tracking data. If you watch the visual right here, you see it's kind of lost the English word here, but it's very it doesn't really tell you the true story here, because if you watch all the 290 shots on the blocker,
yeah,
are they all in the same spot?
Yeah. So more fine grained. What about rebounds? Like, so I've been thinking of building a project on rebounds. Mm-hmm. Is that worth me spending a year on and burning a grad student on or not?
I would love to see that data, but my first question would be, what is a good rebound and what is a bad rebound? Because you got to define those.
You're the goaltending coach. You tell me.
Well,
like, so I'm imagining like some good rebounds are maybe I deflected into the corner. Right.
It could be, but a good rebound could also be straight in front of you, because that's where you have the most coverage in that situation.
Sure. And I can imagine, like, because I have puck and player tracking data, I can imagine the rebound goes to my teammate and it gets there very quickly. Mm-hmm. Or I can also imagine, oh, wait a minute, they gave the rebound, but they had no help whatsoever. Right. Mm-hmm. There's 5 opposition members there and they're pouncing on the puck all game long. And so I guess the question is that of interest or not?
Of course it is.
Okay.
And so we're in a kind of a tough spot in Färjestad. We recently signed a month ago a goaltender, which just days after announcing that he was signed, we knew that he's going to be offered a one-way deal going back to North America. So I've been, for the better part of 30 days right now, plowing through hours and hours and hours of video. And one of the things that we talked about was a case of a goalie where the numbers weren't great. We knew that they struggled defensively on the team. And when watching the goals, we could see a lot of different weird things going on in their own end, players screening the goalie in wrong situations, or goals being scored after not the second, not the third, maybe the fourth rebound. And these are the kind of things that I could write down in a report. But if you could find a way to shorten that time so I don't have to sit up until 1 a.m. in the morning to create my reports, that'd be awesome.
So good. So tips, for example. So does the goaltender get a pass if it's tipped?
Coming in.
So there's a shot, and before it gets to the goaltender, somebody tips the puck, and now it's changed positions. Very hard to save because just at the last second, it's in a completely different place. So I could imagine doing that with puck and player tracking data. So say, hey, look, of the 3 goals, the person one day they were giving somebody heck because they had a poor game in the NHL, and I thought, wait a minute, 3 of those goals out of 5 were tip-ins. Right. And you're not, I can't imagine you're expecting the keeper to save that because, you know, it's just right in front of the net. Somebody gets a stick on it and boom, it's in the bottom corner instead of the top. So is that kind of information useful?
I would love that information as well. The more constant context that we can put into this, the better.
Okay.
And using that as an example, that would save me so many times in an argument in the coach's office after the game has been lost, because usually when we win, nobody says anything. But we get a lot of tension when we lose.
We talked about this before.
Yeah.
I think patterns, every kind of all patterns that happens before the shot or the goal in this case, is interesting because that's what we're looking at. So yeah.
So one good example would be what Sean just told us about playing the puck outside the net. Was it 15 seconds?
Yes, anything 12 to 15.
Okay, so if I go back about 4 years, I believe it is, myself, Thomas, and William, I'm not sure if you were on that trip. We went to Nashville and we were listening to this presentation from Jordan Segale. He was working with Mike Smith at the time and made a project on his ability to play the puck outside the net. Well, Jordan Segale, the goalie coach back then, got a lot of critique for Mike giving up scoring chances against, goals against, and it doesn't look good when you play the puck and it ends up in your own net. But what he could prove by tracking all the passes, all the exits, he could actually prove that they scored twice the amount of goals forward, and they had, I believe it was 12 or 15 more scoring chances for compared to against. So should we not tell Mike Smith to go outside the net, or should we tell Mike Smith to go outside the net? These are all the different context stories that I would love to dig in deeper in, and using the funnel just to narrow it down to things that could help me on a daily basis or my goalies.
No, thanks.
I'm a former soccer keeper. The same discussion is in soccer keepers. Should they go out actively to pass the ball to the back, or should they just be more traditional with the long hit? It was the same statistic. If you maybe you miss 1 or 2 per season, or so, but you maybe have like 10 goals that you don't have otherwise if you don't dare to do these passes.
It is, and really what it is it's a cat and mouse game. We have Thomas with a wealth of experience on how to work with goalies and goalie coaches, and then a few years back, Thomas started to working a lot with our shootings, which created issues for the goalie coaches where we needed to adjust, and then we found out something, and then the numbers tell us another thing. So it's always it's a constant cat and mouse game all the time.
Good, thanks. Anyone want to have a final question? No, I think in such a case we thank the panel, give them an applause.